This briefing is intended to inspire leaders to thoughts and actions that will help them elevate their organizational culture in the coming years. Do you see yourself as a leader? If so, do you consider yourself a good and effective one? Whether you do or you don't, I urge you to remain open to the idea that you may have the potential to be far more influential than you currently are. If you work with others, you can always exert leadership. I'm not speaking about command over others. Leadership takes more profound forms than simple authority. By viewing yourself as a resource to help or inspire other people, you immediately position yourself as a leader. Do it well, and you will truly distinguish yourself because it is exactly this kind of leadership that the world needs most. Let's begin with a few important facts. Your organization is not everything it could be. This is true because we humans are imperfect. We are wired to conserve energy by taking the path of least resistance. This shows up in our personal performance and, by extension, our organizations. No matter how accomplished you might be, there is always room for improvement. We tend to both over and underestimate the extent of our influence. We don't always see the ways, means, and effects of our actions. But if you belong to an organization, you can improve that organization, even if it is only a little. Perhaps the most important truth to recognize is that it is in your power to improve. If you apply more energy, you can further develop yourself and make bigger contributions to your organization's well-being. You just have to decide if it's worth the extra effort. You have to form a clear picture of what improvement will look like and what that means to the people you impact. If you decide that the payoff just isn't there, you should probably find another organization, because what you're saying is that you don't see a future in your current role. Also, just what constitutes an improvement may not be the same for everybody. Productivity is, of course, one very important measure, but so is human experience in terms of enjoyment on the job, the difference the organization makes for others, and the relationships formed along the way. These are sometimes difficult to quantify. They may depend on an individual perspective, but everybody knows when they are chronically lacking. Most of the time, the emphasis is on money. The processes that serve to improve relationships and satisfaction and result in increased productivity are energy-consuming and ceaseless. This is why they are widely underimplemented. Plus, circumstances often work against us. One such challenge is the ever-increasing rate of change and the pressure to react this creates. It is a reality that defines our times. Historians of the future are likely to view the era of our lifetimes as a time of great transition, a time when significant trappings and belief systems of the previous age are being shed and those of a new one emerge. From our vantage, it's hard to know what changes are best, how they will ultimately impact us, and whether it's prudent or even possible to ignore them. While change challenges us, it also brings tremendous opportunity. If you and your organization can better manage change than others, it will be difficult indeed for them to outperform or outcompete you. Of course, many leadership challenges have nothing to do with changing times. Many are timeless, archetypical challenges that are simply vagaries of working with a spectrum of fabulous and flawed people. In this sense, the challenge of leadership is the same as it has ever been. Whether navigating change or trying to be the best possible steward of resources, the effective leader must combine good vision with good sense and good directives. In other words, leaders need wisdom. It is a leader's most precious attribute. It is related to intelligence, but it is less common and more valuable. Think about it. You know lots of smart people, but how many truly wise people do you know? We're talking about people whose every action is firmly footed in rock-solid principle, people whose carefully considered decisions consistently result in the greatest good for all around them. The good news is that, unlike material precious commodities like gold and diamonds, you can cultivate your own wisdom. Intelligence can be thought of as perceptive and processing power. You need intelligence to discern problems and their solutions. Wisdom is the application of intelligence. It is intelligence in action. Many smart people lack wisdom. The cast of The Big Bang Theory humorously illustrates this. But in the real world, lots of smart people get wiped out in the stock market. They fall for swindles. They believe ridiculous things. They behave poorly in their personal decision-making. They aren't trying to complicate their lives. They are simply human. To cultivate real wisdom, a leader needs to avoid common pitfalls and embrace universal truths. The wise leader must tap resources bigger than themselves. An in-depth exploration of the topic exceeds the scope of this briefing, so we will focus on a few highlights. The biggest trap the wise leader must avoid is static, self-centered, or self-serving thinking. The leader is as big as the things he or she cares about. Wise leaders focus on the bigger picture and help others do the same. They don't expect something for nothing. They know that the best laid plans can and will go awry. They take the long view. They put specifics in the proper context. They do not take things personally, and they leave space for the contributions of others. The universal truths are numerous too, but here are some major ones. It is difficult to picture a wise leader who doesn't treat others well, lacks the courage and conviction to take actions necessary for the good of the whole, lacks self-discipline, or thinks only of him or herself. It is also a trait of the best leaders that they stand for something bigger than themselves. If you haven't heard of the Platinum Rule before, it is a modern extension of the Golden Rule popularized by Tony Alessandra and Scott Zimmerman. The Golden Rule, which essentially sums up the teachings in the Bible, says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." The Platinum Rule says, "Do unto others as they would have done unto them." This places additional responsibility upon you as a leader because you have to cultivate the habits and skills that allow you to identify the priorities, values, and style of the people with whom you interact and then adjust your behavior accordingly. It is well worth the extra effort. You will build your relationships. You will strengthen your team. You will not only build knowledge, but learn how to best apply that knowledge. Because so much of what we perceive to be true is actually, in part or whole, an illusion. If you want to act wisely, you must systematically dispel common delusions, no matter how many people share them. Yet, you need others because nobody can see their own blind spots. Now, maybe you take some offense to the suggestion that you're delusional. Well, it's nothing personal, I assure you. I'm suggesting, as creatures of limited perceptive powers, we all are. I don't mean to offend, but I do mean to speak truth. I only ask you to remain engaged and think it through. I invite you to question my ideas and assumptions, but question yours and the people in your organization as well. All journeys begin with a single step. So, if you take nothing else from this presentation, I hope you identify one suggested action that you can take immediately that you know will move your organization in a positive direction. And then I want you to take that action. So how might you better serve others around you? How might you become more valuable to them and the organization as a whole? What are the areas that most trouble the organization of the 21st century? Those are good questions because they point you in the direction of increasing wisdom. They lead your mind into areas where you could discover tremendous value. My guess is that identifying the areas where your organization could stand to improve is not very difficult for you. Do any of the following seem familiar? If you find yourself in a position of leadership in an organization that faces one or more of these challenges, you may also think of these as inevitable features in working with people in today's culture and the prevailing environment. I'm not suggesting that a trouble-free utopia is attainable, but turning an area of relative weakness into relative strength is not just possible, it is your responsibility as a leader. You might even spend some energy strengthening relative strengths. Any course of action that enhances organizational function, while it may in essence be simple, will never be easy. It requires energy and commitment from leadership. But once you decide that the investment is worthwhile, the payoffs take the following forms. You can keep and make more money. You can better serve customers. You foster a better functioning team. And it's also not bad for your career trajectory. Okay, so you want to elevate yourself and your team. That's great. Let's have a look at the world in which you will be operating. We must first come to terms with sweeping technological changes and their repercussions. Exponential growth curves, such as that described by Moore's Law, which applies to the logarithmic increases in processing power, mean continuous change in every organization. The wise leader simply must embrace change. This swims against our natures because we put so much into doing the best in our current endeavors, but resistance is a luxury fewer and fewer can afford. These changes are so profound that we are on the precipice of an entirely new age. I will leave it to others to define it. For our purposes, we simply must recognize the changes that are coming and fold the resulting thinking into our personal and organizational decision-making. We can learn from many examples of the disastrous effects of resisting change. Sometimes it takes the form of the success trap. We do something so much better than others for so long that it appears that our position is unassailable. It never is. IBM couldn't picture the widespread use of the personal computer. Polaroid assumed it was a given that people would always want physical prints of their photos. General Motors assumed that Americans would always want big, powerful cars. Other times, leaders don't do their homework, or they are mistaken in their assessments. In sports, teams may trade or draft the wrong athlete and then pass on ones that would have translated to many more team wins. Entertainment executives routinely let the precious treasure of a compelling script or a great show concept remain hidden among the volumes of mediocre submissions. Or they guess wrong about how a potentially controversial show idea will play with audiences. This inspired the famous words of William Goldman, "Nobody knows anything," meaning that even the most experienced movie executives don't know how a film will do until it's released. These examples are the tip of the iceberg. The same misses happen routinely in other industries too. This is well illustrated in Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma. Sometimes the hallmark of the wise leader is simply the ability to avoid big errors. This is not to say that the wise leader should be afraid of risk or create an environment where people are afraid to make a mistake. Mistakes are necessary and helpful in learning and growing. But the wise leader must pay attention. To what? They must continually question and challenge their personal and organizational assumptions, because more and more our working assumptions have shorter shelf lives. The wise leader must also clearly see their pertinent circumstances, and they must continually be plugged into the bigger picture and help those around them to do the same. Challenge personal and organizational assumptions by asking questions like, what do you believe to be true? What would convince you that it is no longer the case? Analyze ever-changing circumstances by closely looking at trends in your competitive environment. Ask questions such as, what are the newest players doing? What can they do that we can't? How is their cost structure different than our own? Make sure you look at the bigger picture by looking outside of your industry for trends and innovations that impact your customers, employees, and partners. To that end, let's take a closer look at the macro-scale forces at play today. Let's return to the distinctions of the postmodern era. This chart is a compilation of analysis from numerous sources. It is not meant to be definitive so much as descriptive. Postmodern perspectives are not brand new, having been emergent for over a century now. Together, they form enough of a break from the past to define a new era. Look over this list. You may be tempted to think that the modern belief or viewpoint is better or worse than its postmodern counterpoint. This kind of thinking is a trap. A particular viewpoint may be more or less appropriate or effective in a particular situation. In this sense only is it better or worse. What we're describing is a polarity, prevailing current in thought. So more and more, people will come to their roles in an organization with a postmodern point of view. It doesn't mean that they will be right or even the most effective person in that role. But you as a leader need to understand where they're coming from and why. The postmodern thinker, typically younger, is less likely to respect authority, less likely to toe the company line, less likely to dedicate the major portion of their waking hours and their energy to a single cause, less likely to be motivated by either money, patriotism, or the threat of job loss. They are more likely to respond to professional growth opportunities, adopt needed change, and accept flexible or unorthodox work arrangements. They ask fewer what questions and more why questions. It behooves the wise leader to pay attention to these differences in considering decisions that affect both customers and employees. We are charged to help our organizations grow amidst the clash between these worldviews. But the task of leadership must face other challenges too. Here are 4. Much of the difficulty with the rate of employment in the United States is not simply a lack of jobs, but a lack of productive candidates, at least productive in the traditional sense. Increasingly, organizations struggle to fill positions with candidates who have the necessary high-level skills. Laboratories must hire PhDs who cannot effectively write or present their research. Companies must hire managers who may lack those skills but may be further hampered by low emotional intelligence. Firms of all kinds struggle to find people who will simply show up to work regularly and on time, or who can even pass a drug screening or a criminal background check. Another tension is the changing nature of work itself. The less cognitive the job, the more it is threatened by increasing automation. We now have self-driven cars on the road. It won't be long before jobs such as taxi cab or truck drivers will be a thing of the past. Similar innovations will obsolete all manner of labor jobs such as field laborers and trash collectors. This process is well underway. We now frequently check our own groceries, for example. TurboTax and TaxCut do much of the work of tax accountants. Telephone operators are nearly non-existent. These trends will only accelerate. We are all aware of the pressures that arise from globalization. Many workers do not compete with peers in their communities, but with everyone everywhere. This puts downward pressure on the value of processing work that can be done from afar. Technology swings the door the other way, too. A self-motivated person with a computer is able to provide goods and services on a global scale. This continues to transform the music, publishing, and software industries. It has profound implications for many other businesses, especially with the advent of 3D printing that is converting home offices into mini factories. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about these things. What do these changes mean to your organization and to you personally? I'll tell you what I take from all of this. It seems that more and more, the creative faculty of the human mind is the most valuable resource that we can cultivate. The implications for us as individuals are enormous. The major implication is that we must remain or become continual learners. We can never again sit back on skills or knowledge that we may have acquired in the past. For organizations, no matter what their core business or industry, they must excel in the continual development of its constituents. They have to build into their culture the notion that tomorrow we will be better than we are today. Not in mere words. Much lip service is already put to this idea. No, it must be woven into the fabric of daily operations. This is tricky, and therefore most organizations come up short in these efforts. Those organizations that do it well stand out in the marketplace and dominate their competitors. Through all of this, you can see that people represent both the biggest asset for an organization and its most significant challenge. Successful organizations devote a tremendous amount of resources to developing and employing sound people strategy. Of course, all organizations have a people strategy. The question the wise leader must face is, does our people strategy result in superior performance because we constantly attract, select, develop, and retain the best available talent? Do we maximize the potential of each person on our team? As a wise leader, you must not only decide what changes are necessary. If you want to be an agent for positive change, you must take personal responsibility for it. Therefore, all initiatives begin with a look in the mirror. That means that you must take responsibility and ownership of the changes you want to see and make those personal adjustments to model those changes for others. You can take no greater action than helping people cultivate a sense of personal purpose. This is the source of passion and engagement, necessary ingredients to world-class performance. Sometimes people find it naturally. They are born with obvious gifts and skills, and their abilities fuel their passion. For most people, the discovery process is not obvious. Workplace studies show how low the bar is when it comes to employee engagement. Nearly 70% surveyed consistently report neutral to negative attitudes towards their jobs and their organizations. The wise leader does not tolerate this level, but instead discovers ways to connect individuals with organizational purpose. They start by finding the right person for a particular role. They also develop and nourish the potential of their people. Engagement and passion grow when our skills increase. There are powerful tools available to assist you in these efforts, some of which we will outline. Start by clarifying your picture of your organization's purpose. In what ways does your organization improve the lives of its customers, employees, and community? The answers to this question are fantastic starting points to help you connect the members of your team to a bigger purpose. You need multiple answers because different people feel motivated by different factors. You take up this leadership challenge when you engage in a consistent dialogue with your people about their sense of satisfaction, and what they might find most fulfilling as a member of the organization. Constantly look for ways in which their contribution might center on those activities most closely connected with serving the particular purpose that means the most to them. You may want to think more about your organization's purpose. The obvious answers, such as make money or produce our product service, are incomplete. Make a list of all the benefits that would be lost if the organization was erased from existence. Look over the list. Is there a theme or organizing principle that becomes evident to you? This theme is reflected in your organization's culture. You need to strengthen and nourish those factors that support this culture. Also, you must eliminate or diminish those factors that weaken the culture. Let's be sure we are clear on what we mean by the term organizational culture. It is simply the sum of attitudes, customs, and beliefs that distinguishes your organization. As you clarify the culture of your organization, consider the factors listed in the left column of this chart. For each of the listed factors, is the culture more in the modern or the postmodern polarity? Is that the right place for it, considering the organization's purpose and the kinds of talent that you need to fulfill that purpose? You might want to identify the gaps and then identify actions you can take to move the team in the desired direction. I hope that some of the upcoming discussion will inspire some ideas for you. Note that there is not necessarily a right versus wrong in these polarities. What is best for your organization depends on numerous elements. But remember, the gravitational pull is in the postmodern direction. So if there is ambiguity, you may want to come up with ways to appeal to the postmodern way of thinking. At least some of this is just not optional. Your culture is changing, and it will continue to do so. The questions are, how intentional will that change be? And how will it serve organizational purpose? I said cultural change is not optional. Well, it's not optional if you want to compete. If leadership is not actively and regularly engaged in nurturing organizational culture, it reverts to the norm. And the norm is not very good. It's not good because it doesn't necessarily match your organization. It also isn't good because in order to outdistance competitive firms, you need better talent than they have. You can think of your organization like a garden. You spend so much time and energy making sure everything is in the right place and that each part complements the other. You can build it into a thing of real beauty. But ignore it and weeds take over. The function is compromised because you are at the vagaries of the needs of each individual without regard to the whole. Some elements of organizational culture are timeless. They are the realities of human nature and organizational psychology. Other elements are more sensitive to the moods and realities of the age. With that in mind, here are some of the characteristics of an elevated culture of this century. The environment is based on mutual respect and trust. Communication is clear and value-based. Employees are focused and aligned with regards to matters that serve organizational priorities and stakeholders' needs. You attract, select, develop, and retain top talent. The organization is agile. It responds to change. The element that ties it all together is this. The optimal organizational culture of the 21st century is not possible without leadership's commitment to the growth and development of its people. Before you take action intended to elevate culture in your organization, you must further consider the elements that comprise it. We talked about the organization's purpose and walked through some ways to express it more completely. We also identified the macro paradigm changes that demark the transition from the modern to the postmodern age. These attitudes are present in the people who make up the organization and through them influence the organization's culture. But we must consider two other important factors that shape your organization's culture. First, the culture will always be a reflection of the personal values of its leadership. We're talking about deeply held values and they're not likely to change. Second, the culture is an extension of the norms and accepted practices of the past. An organization has a cultural momentum, and this will also be slow to change. Your action plan must take these factors into account in order to succeed in creating lasting positive change. Your efforts may work best if you picture piloting a cruise ship rather than a speedboat. Actions need to be steady and take place over time. Another consideration for the wise leader who takes personal responsibility to bring about positive change is the time-tested and necessary process required. Famously identified first by Napoleon Hill in his classic Think and Grow Rich, you must undergo a 7-step process. If you're unfamiliar with these steps, your first action should be to acquire a copy of that book and read it carefully with pen and pad in hand. Write down the commitments you're willing to make. Identify those who will join you to make it happen. Include those people in your planning and execution. Don't forget the 7th step. It is important to celebrate important milestones. As previously suggested, the best place to start is you. You simply begin, or continue, steps towards your own personal and professional development. An excellent idea is to identify a personal initiative or resolution and work on that. Maybe one you know is a priority, but you just haven't been able to allocate time for it. Another suggestion is to pick a specific skill to strengthen. If you'd like some ideas as to what skills or attributes will help you lead positive changes that will elevate culture, here are 7 competencies that just happen to correspond to the 7 steps to positive change that you might consider. Each one has 3 primary skill components. There are various ways you can go about strengthening these skills. Training modules and exercises are available for each one. If you look at this list and see some that you would like to work on, great. Just do yourself a favor. Pick one and work on that. Once you've built on that area, then you can move on to the next. You don't have to do it alone. Enlist some outside help or ask people on your team to work alongside of you. There's power in working together towards personal development. Initiatives such as training, joining a mastermind or support group, getting a mentor or professional development coach are examples of ways to leverage others in your own development. Once underway with your personal development, the next logical focus is the systematic development of your team. If you haven't already, begin similar development programs with each member of the team. You should keep in mind that for best results, these need to be tailored for their particular individual need. Any program or initiative should also be undertaken with a long-term commitment in order to maximize the results and to avoid the seminar effect. You likely know what I mean by that. You experience insights and breakthroughs at educational or motivational seminars, and you leave on an emotional high that lasts 2 days or maybe 2 weeks. After that, the materials sit forgotten on a shelf, and there's only a very marginal residual benefit retained from the investment in time and money. Continual development is woven into the fabric of the roles of your people. It is expected, an important part of how their performance is measured at quarterly reviews. Hopefully you conduct reviews at least this often. If this is not something you currently do, I have some great news. There are new and exciting options available that offer valuable learning along with gamification. This is the latest buzzword in training and development circles. It simply means people learn better when they're having fun doing it. Options include group-based activities such as winning the training game, which offers a board game in which up to 12 people at a single table can learn topics ranging from sales skills, customer service, workforce readiness, leadership, business communication, and a host of others, all customizable for the particular organization. In order to provide even more continual and systemic development, an exciting new option is available called the HRX Plan. This cloud-based, customizable development platform gives managers a dashboard by which they can track the continual progress of each member of their team. Managers and team members have access to their portal and most, if not all, of their developmental material via the web and mobile apps. The content can vary from skill-strengthening exercises to participation in a book discussion group, along with a wide variety of options limited only by our imaginations. This platform is also gamified, meaning that the team may earn points as they progress through their programs. As a result, the system represents both the carrot, as you can incentivize progress, and the stick, as they know their progress will be monitored. Other web-based systems such as Skillsoft and customized training programs via a host of training companies are available with a range of cost and logistical options. The nice thing about a system such as HRX Plan is the low cost tends to contribute to long-term sustainability. The key to success is to pick a system that is right for you and your organization and go with it. Commit to the long term so that people on your team do the same. This is an indispensable way for you to elevate your culture and create a team that will thrive in the 21st century. Psychometric tools help you make conversations less subjective and more objective. They help you get past personal differences or disagreements. They allow you to gain agreement about a person's attributes, their skills, behaviors, values, attitudes, even their emotional intelligence. Some of these attributes are innate and relatively unchanging in a person. Others may be developed. Psychometrics are indispensable tools for matching a person to a role. They help you coach the person past their current limitations and find ways to best leverage their individual strengths. In this way, psychometric tools light the best path towards a person's optimal development. They also contribute to team function as members learn to appreciate the differences among themselves. They come to appreciate and value relative strengths and form better expectations of one another. Different psychometric tools correspond with different aspects of our psychological makeup. Possibly the most common tools, of which you are likely aware, are the DISC and Myers-Briggs assessments. These give glimpses into the other areas but are best used to gauge behavior styles and patterns. Other instruments are better for gaining insights into a person's attitudes, values, or motivational factors and their skills. They share the benefit of a detailed report that offers many insights that will signify important developmental opportunities. A notable measurement when it comes to performance as a manager or a leader is emotional intelligence. Studies show a clear correlation between high-performing managers and high EQ. The good news is that perhaps unlike IQ, a manager's emotional intelligence can be significantly enhanced through developmental work. The systematic development of a management team's EQ is one of the fastest, easiest, and most effective ways to elevate the organizational culture. I've thus far encouraged you to start elevating the culture of your organization by developing first yourself and then your people. We've set forth numerous specific actions that represent fantastic first steps. But please remember that these actions will be much more powerful if they are done in concert with a broader people strategy. All organizations have a people strategy. The question is to what degree have they adopted the best available practices? How much real commitment do they show to their number one asset? A comprehensive review of people strategy is beyond the scope of this briefing. Let's instead focus on 3 initiatives that form the basis of an outstanding people strategy. Traditional methods of hiring and development have served us well. They've become traditional for good reason. But in the environment of the 21st century, they are inadequate. You must be more proactive and more precise in attracting, selecting, and developing talent in your organization. The best practices of job benchmarking, utilizing a formal onboarding process, and establishing an ongoing success metrics program are among the best ways to accomplish this. Job benchmarking is the process of defining the qualities that bring success in a professional role. A job description alone is no longer sufficient. It leaves too much room for opinion and interpretation. Without a job benchmark, you review resumes, conduct interviews, and come to a point where you're 80% sure that you have the right candidate, and then you hope like heck that they work out, because a wrong hire is very costly. Job benchmarking makes up most of the remaining gap. We begin by gathering the stakeholders who interact with the person in a particular role. Together, we identify the top key accountabilities and their measurements. Then we use a proven technology to identify and quantify the ideal behavioral, motivational, and soft skill attributes. Candidates who pass the conventional criteria are given an online psychometric assessment. The results are compared to the benchmark. The successful candidate will match as closely as possible. The areas that don't match provide proactive opportunities to develop the successful candidate. The process pays exponential benefits because not only the candidate's chances of success are increased significantly, but those who interact with that role have a much better understanding about how to help that person be successful. The team functions better when everybody shares compatible views of what success looks like in their respective roles. Furthermore, competency-based hiring has been proven to lead to higher functioning and more productive teams. Many organizations have formal onboarding processes, especially with high-level employees. These may include internal resources such as peer-to-peer meetings, the assignment of a human resources liaison, and published orientation materials. They often include external resources such as executive coaching. Successful firms go to these lengths because they know that such efforts pay off. Yet many firms, actually a majority of those under 1,000 employees, either have no onboarding program or it's informal, reliant on the whims and skills of personnel in direct contact with the newly hired person. The problem with that is that those firms leave on the table unknown quantities of money along with a terrible price in terms of human frustration. This chart offers a bit of insight. Depending on the kind of organization, incremental increases in productivity directly affect the bottom line. For instance, in an organization where the combined cost of its people represent 40% of total costs, a 20% increase in productivity yields a 160% increase in net pre-tax profit. Initiatives such as job benchmarking, effective onboarding, success metrics, along with ongoing professional development efforts, result in huge productivity gains and can transform the health of the organization. Success metrics is a program based upon the axiom, that which is measured grows. It is especially true in human behavior. Success metrics are a system by which you identify 3 to 5 behaviors or activities to which you want a particular employee to give top-of-mind awareness. Ideally, these behaviors directly lead to more revenue generation and/or cost reduction actions. They could also enhance brand, team function, or provide other organizational benefit. This chart is an example for a person who might be working frontline retail. Of course, specifics will change from job to job, person to person, and organization to organization. The measurements should be attainable so that the conscientious employee can and will hit the mark, but not so low that it will happen by itself with no special effort on their part. I found it best to periodically change the metrics for a specific person to keep them fresh. To work best, there should be rewards for achieving the prescribed performance levels. The reward should not be so large as to comprise an expected bonus and be viewed by the employee as part of their compensation. But it should not be so small that they are indifferent towards their accomplishment. Metrics should be established for everybody on a particular team. People should not feel either singled out nor excluded. Success metrics actually become a powerful management tool because it helps the management team reach agreement and clarity on its priorities. Organizational health is mostly dependent upon the quality of people on the team, but not entirely. The organization must have sound strategy. If the company is profitable, or in the case of nonprofits, the organization is thriving, it has good strategy. The problem is that sound strategies increasingly have shorter shelf lives. Executives must constantly reevaluate their assumptions and analyze their competitive landscape. This can be difficult to do, especially under the pressures of short-term bottom-line oriented thinking from owners or shareholders. The best practice for strategic analysis is to subject current strategy to intense scrutiny. Done well, this approach challenges unexamined beliefs and sheds light on the organization's strategic vulnerabilities. Organizations, especially the good ones, are susceptible to the success trap mentioned earlier. Remember that this happens when a strategy or approach has worked so well that it appears unassailable. Once mighty firms such as U.S. Steel, General Motors, Polaroid, Nokia, Blockbuster, and countless others have all mistakenly assumed that their time-tested approaches would pay off long after the realities of the market rendered those beliefs false. An important key to success in the 21st century is agility, or the ability to quickly adapt to marketplace change. The larger the organization, the more institutional momentum it has, the harder it is to be agile. It is therefore wise to continually make an ecology check of the organization's underlying assumptions and beliefs. Sophisticated approaches have been developed by the military to address the challenge of formulating strategies in peacetime that will be radically different from their operating environment in times of war. Fortunately, some of those methods apply to all organizations. One such approach is called Red Team. This is essentially a strategic audit by which existing strategy is put to the test against opposing strategies to reveal potential weaknesses. Canary is a dynamic analysis of the assumptions of executives of a firm. It is a survey taken over time and compared against changing market conditions. Such a program provides a history of a firm's strategic evolution and serves as an early warning system, like a canary in a coal mine, where weaknesses could be developing. Splinter is an approach based on famed Harvard business strategist Clayton Christensen's concept of discovery-based planning. This recognizes that firms can develop new strategies only when they devote resources to exploring alternate ways of competing. In opposition to the traditional big plan, then big finance approach to innovation, Splinter employs rapid iteration and an emphasis on modeling to reduce the expense of following dead ends in strategic exploration. Taken together, these 5 initiatives will help you as a wise leader elevate your culture and equip your organization for success in the coming era. My goal in this presentation is to inspire you to take such actions that will lead to this success. You need not do everything at once, but every great journey begins with a first step. Are you ready? If your answer is yes, then I am humbly at your disposal. We've identified the path and processes and listed numerous tools and methods by which you can accomplish transformative leadership. Many of the suggestions I've offered, I can personally assist you with. Those that I can't, I can introduce you to very capable professionals who can. I'm Tom Dardick. My consulting practice is all about equipping wise leaders to elevate team function. Over the last decade, I've conducted countless trainings, presentations, and initiatives, all in the area of interpersonal communication. I've noticed that many of these crucially important practices are lacking in most organizations. It's a shame because professional and personal success is virtually certain for those leaders willing to put themselves on the line, willing to self-examine, and extend a generous hand to those around them to help them succeed too. I have allied with powerful partners to increase the value I can bring to an organization. I invite you to reach out to me if you'd like assistance in taking steps forward to elevate the culture in your organization. Thank you very much for watching this presentation.